And those speeches capped off a primary election season full of ups and downs and literally dozens of candidates in Maryland alone, even dozens of candidates in a single district. So let's talk through it tonight with our guests. I never get to say this. On the left, Jack Kalavritinos, former Bush and Trump senior administration official, and on the right, Democratic strategist Kevin Walling. The only time we get to say
we flipped it.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to start with you on this, Jack, because we heard from Kevin earlier, but Larry Hogan changed the dynamics of this race. It clearly is a seat that can be in play. We were talking about the fact that you did have 30% of voters going for Robin Ficker, but in the end, that's not going to matter much, will it?
I don't think so. I mean, I heard you talking to Fitz about that, and I think, you know, maybe some will say, I'm not sure I'm going to vote, but I think most of them will pull the lever. They realize that a lot is at stake, and those 30% will go to Hogan.
Yeah. As we talked with you earlier tonight, obviously this was a race that Democrats, a lot of money went into this race. David Trone putting some $56 million into it of his own money. Angela Alsobrooks was really trailing behind in the early stages of this. Where did you see the tides turn?
Within the last month or so. And funny enough, I just did some quick back-of-the-envelope math. David Trone spent $400 for every primary vote in this election, which is an enormous sum, outspent Angela Alsobrooks by 10 to 1. And I really saw the dynamic shift in that last month. We talked about it a little earlier about that Avengers ad, right, with Governor Moore, with the leading Maryland Democrats across the state coming to bat for her. She really focused on Baltimore City, especially. David Trone kind of let that fly by the wayside, even though his election night party was in Baltimore. And she ran up the numbers there. And now we're seeing, you know, she won Baltimore County, now actually won Montgomery County with the latest results coming in. So she's going to be a formidable candidate against Larry Hogan.
But when you look at the style, stylistically is one thing. When you look at the substance out there, Angela Alsobrooks, former state's attorney, was successful there, was elected as county executive. She's been in that post for a number of years now. Larry Hogan is known across the state. Jack, when you get out of Montgomery County and Prince George's County, when you go into the other reaches, when you go to the Eastern Shore, when you go up towards the ends of that monster district that Fitz was talking about, up towards Garrett County, I think also Brooks it's an uphill climb because Larry Hogan is already well known in those areas.
I mean, yeah, and then you might expect me to say I think he's going to win, and I just think it's going to be a toss-up because I think he has headwinds. I mean, he's in a Democratic state. You're going to have the Democratic establishment with a popular governor on her side. There's the Trump factor that's there. On the other hand, I think if Trump can make the case, are you better today than you were 4 years ago? If he can make the case about we need change, I think some of the people might go for Hogan, but it's still going to be tough for him in deep blue Maryland, in spite of Eastern Shore and Western Maryland.
But to be fair, on that point, I think when you're saying you're going into this dead even or it being, you know, a 50-50 shot or a tough race, that still says a lot about the strength that the Republicans could potentially have in this race here, considering the demographics.
Listen, Larry Hogan, as we talked about earlier, left office with an 81% approval rate among Democrats. So he was that outlier. To Jack's point, he's never run on a ballot with Donald Trump at the top of it. He's only won in those midterm elections, right? So that Trump factor will be something because Democrats will certainly turn out in a general election for Joe Biden, and we'll see what happens on that next tier down, whether folks split their tickets and go with Hogan or stay that Democratic line.
You know, when we were talking about that 6th district race, and April Delaney put a lot of money of her own into that race as well, but that is a district that's, if you look at it, I talked to Neil Parrott on the show not too long ago, and he was part of that redistricting lawsuit where we saw a good amount of redistricting happening in Maryland. Do you see, Jack, from that perspective, where we're looking at Montgomery County and up 270, do you see at least that seat in play for the GOP?
Well, I think so, exactly because of what you just said. If it was the traditional old district, that's one thing, but considering how far north it goes, I do think it's in play. And by the way, when it comes to money, and you said you did your back of the envelope, I did my back of the envelope for David Trone. He has now spent over $100 million in all of his races, whether he won them or lost them, out of his personal loss. So I think some of the people that might be the unhappiest, you know, today about what he has spent might be his own heirs. Maybe they're actually happy he lost because
it's a whole lot of wine. It's a whole
he
lot
won't
of
spend
wine.
another $70 million to try to win the general.
Somebody calculated how many bottles of Josh Pinot Grigio all of that money could buy. So as we look ahead the next couple of months, I mean, David Trone was going to be able to self-fund a race on his own. The Democrats, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee already came out with a statement trying to unite people. I mean, I think people, if they were tired of the campaign ads in Maryland, Kevin, you're not going to get any respite from those anytime soon.
It's certainly the case with Maryland folks, but it's also, we've got some bleed, obviously, with the Washington, D.C. DMA. Trump is making a play for Virginia, supposedly,
Yeah.
so you're going to see a lot of those presidential ads as well. A lot of those outside spending ads in addition to the presidential level.
Something I rarely get to say on the show. Guys, stick around. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the race and beyond when the Final Five comes right back on this Maryland primary night.